Hello and welcome. This is Tristan Roberts, host of the Quill Nook Experience, coming into you today from Halifax, Vermont. And I'm connected today with Richo Cech. And Richo, allow you to introduce yourself.
Richo Cech, owner of Strictly Medicinal Seeds and author of Making Plant Medicine and some other various volumes on herbal medicine and consciousness. I'm pleased to be with you today and look forward to the discussion.
Well, thanks, Richo. I wanted to start with an appreciation of you that I think will help listeners understand, well, why did I invite you on the podcast at all? And you've got several books that I would recommend. All of them. They've been on my shelf and spent a lot of time with them over the winter. And three things I loved about your books. One is you reframed weeding for me as you sort of tickling the roots of the plants, aerating them, spending time on your knees with the plants and getting to know them better. And it's like a pleasure to kind of tickle the plants by weeding. I try to control my weeds, but it gets you down there. You talk about rubber fingers in your books, which is really helpful to just understand how to interact with plants physically. The tips are great. And I've grown some mandrake. I started from seed this last winter and got into relationship with that plant, which you talk about very vividly in your books. And I appreciate how you kind of responded to avarice from what mandrake was showing to you in an interesting way. So I just appreciate your storytelling and your knowledge and your seeds, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Well, really, it's all about connection, isn't it? We connect with each other. We connect with the earth through the intermediary of the plants and our hands. The rubber fingers. Somebody from Hawaii once said that she read that part of the book and she and her partner could not stop laughing. They thought it was really funny that I was trying to instruct people on how to work with your hands, because this is something that should just be natural and come without any need for instruction. Hands come without an instruction manual. But yeah, just that kind of looseness of touch can help communicate with the plants and make them happier. And since we're all one and we're all connected, then if the plants are happier, then we're happier and we can just move on in that path.
Yeah. I relate to the Hawaiian laughing at this rubber fingers thing, but from my experience, I host a lot of woofers, farm volunteers that come and visit for a short period of time. And a lot of people are suffering from what you could call nature deficit disorder. Some people call it, where they just don't interact with plants or nature in a way, and they've never done it in their lives. And there's nothing off limits for what might be a helpful thing to instruct someone on who's truly new to plants.
I suppose.
I give a lot of shovel lessons.
I think it is, nature deficit disorder is a cute way of putting it. It really is the problem. Our separateness from nature is really at the root of all of our ills and all of our unhappiness. So whatever techniques can be used to bring us closer to our natural relationship with Mother Earth, then are valuable, but can also be disposed of. And pleasantly enough, they're completely compostable, since they're just thoughts or techniques which can be initiated, utilized, and then composted and used for further growth.
Yeah.
Well, anything like that is great, but it's impermanent like everything else. And so ultimately, you just try to let go of all those tricks, procedures, techniques, and just sort of melt. Just kind of melt into the basic relationship between human and earth. Sometimes it's just about getting people out there and having them breathe the fresh air, and get the body moving and get the hands around a plant, remove the weeds, remove the negative tendencies from the mind, and experience that oneness with nature that is really our natural state.
This is something I appreciate about you. I think there's a lot of people in the world that talk about relationships with plants in different ways. And you exhibit to me a deep openness to plants on a relationship level, which can trend towards and feeling airy fairy, feeling like we're talking about earth energies are very things that don't make sense to a lot of people. And then you're equally comfortable behind a microscope or talking about specific phytochemicals as you are talking about oneness. And I also want to say, not in a reductionist way. When you say, "Oh, here's the chemical that makes wild bergamot tastes like oregano. I made Sunny Honey this year, your recipe." You can name that chemical and talk about it scientifically. And it's to me, you exhibit this unique combination of these traits that I appreciate. Do you recognize that in yourself?
Yeah, I think that it makes sense for us to view the world through all possible portals. A little while back, I was doing a write-up on vervain officinalis, the European form, and I wanted to describe the seeds, but the seeds are too small for me to see, and so I stripped the seeds from the plant that I was using as my little reminder. When I'm writing about a plant, I like to have a sprig of it in front of me, create this connection. And I put the seeds under the microscope, and as I viewed them, the surface of the testa of the seed erupted in these white protrusions, which looked more or less like popcorn that was stuck to the seed coat by some kind of cosmic glue. And I was quite impressed that something I thought was completely static was actually so active. And I had no real idea why the seed would be doing what it was doing. I went in and talked to my wife, and she said, "Are you going to get a Nobel Prize?" And I said, "No, that's pretty unlikely, but it does prove that seeds are alive and perhaps conscious."
You sort of scraped off the seed coat. Did that release some like kinetic energy of how that seed was knit together molecularly? Do you think? Like, what can you describe that?
It is true, yeah, it was stripped from its connection to the mother plant, and that did somehow release some kind of a reaction in the testa, which I haven't really figured out what's going on there, but it would be like kind of like a Mexican jumping bean. You could put it down and then it might move, so it might move in the direction of finding a niche where it could germinate. I don't know. It was one more example of plant consciousness that is something I've picked up on from time to time. A person does a lot of experiments. Sometimes little odd occurrences will make you realize that there's more involved than molecules and water, firmament, the air, et cetera, et cetera. There's a kind of a conscious element that may affect all of the other factors that are involved in germination, longevity, activity, or any of the horticultural factors that we might be testing for. How
What
long
are you
does it take for seed to germinate, this kind of thing.
what are you experimenting with right now?
I've been doing a lot of cuttings because that's the seasonal sort of concern of mine is that some of the mother plants that are out in the field are sort of at the height of their vigor right now before the first frost. So I've been going out and finding little sprigs of different kinds of plants that are not necessarily easy to propagate from seed, or I may not have seed for them, or they may be sterile cultigens that don't make seed. And so I've been plucking the little growing tips and bringing them inside, stripping the lower leaves, dipping in kelp solution, which contains a lot of growth hormones that help plant tissue understand that it should throw roots instead of just sitting there, putting them into the compost, firming them in, adding more soil, firming again, and then I've got them under lights. And this is good for a lot of woody species. One of the ones that I've been working with is the different rock roses, which are ancient plants that have been used in medicine since antiquity. In fact, they're very resinous, and resins are something that gets used in herbal medicine and incense. And so anything that's a resinous plant usually begins to kind of light me up.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, well, I was just thinking about resins and incense
Yeah.
and how we light the incense, and then there's a change of state from resin to a vapor, and how this change of state might have some kind of a message for us in terms of how we work with our desires. Like, do we desire food? Do we desire sex? Do we desire fame? Or can we somehow transmute that to a desire for connection to higher realms, and how incense is typically employed in that manner to remind us of impermanence of the corporeal and transmutation into prayer. Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, was something that is more of a gift to the universe than something that focuses back in on the narcissistic view of self.
Hmm. What do you desire? What do you find yourself desiring?
I would like to entertain. I desire entertaining people and making them laugh and sharing my rich experiences, and hopefully, in so doing, helping them on their path, whether it's by making myself the butt of the joke or by describing some of the rich scenarios that I've come in contact with in the jungles of Colombia, in Central America, in Africa, where I spent 3 years doing African archaeology, in Yunnan, in China, where I visited all throughout the United States, in the deserts, all the way to the mountaintops. I've had great opportunity to create a rich fabric of experience, and I'd like to share that with people.
I believe you said you've done writing nonfiction books. You put everything in Growing Plant Medicine, volumes 1 and 2, which I love. I understand you're writing fiction now. How do you want to entertain people, and why a change at this point in your life?
Well, fiction is unique, isn't it? Because it really has to be based in experience. So you move from memory of conversations, characters, places that you know, and then you make this shift into an imaginary world where you put those things all back together again in a different way. And it is a little bit tricky that way because there are a lot of pitfalls involved. You would like to rewrite history and make it somehow make yourself the hero. That's one of the pitfalls. People will recognize themselves in your stories, and you want to make sure that you're being fair with them in this imaginary world where memory becomes fiction, and family might recognize themselves and then feel that they've been dealt with unfairly, or that fictional universe that you've created is somehow inappropriate. And that can get in the way of publishing because you have to kind of pass the material through the hurdle of your friends before you're able to release it to the public. And so I've created a book of short stories, each one of them reflecting a different place and time in my growth and development. And I think they're quite amusing, but they may never be published because, for instance, a wife, there's a protagonist and then there's a female element. And you have the choice of either making the female element be your ideal or make it be realistic towards the person that first gave you the idea. So if you idealize it, then this creates jealousy. If you make it more realistic, then this creates apprehension, neither of which is publishable.
Yeah.
And so there's really no easy way out. So we'll see how it all progresses. But yeah, it's called Living the Hippie Dream, 5 acres, fruit and cream. Please tell me what it all means. Pass me the corn and beans. No, it's called Living the Hippie Dream.
Mhm.
And hopefully I'll be able to overcome the family hurdles and get that out to the people at some time in the future. either because they're dead or before I'm dead, one or the other.
Click send upon death. What's the hippie dream that you've lived?
Well, so it is 5 acres, fruit and cream, living off the land, being surrounded by family, music, celebration, contemplation, and plenty of self-sufficiency, both in food, which is difficult, and medicine, which is much easier.
Is that why you focused on medicine?
Well, the problem is separation between self and earth, which causes illness. The glue is medicinal herbs, and it could be other things as well. It could be self-service. I mean, service to others. It could be prayer. It could be any number of things. But for us, it's living in the garden of diversity and medicinal herbs. They're the glue that holds us closer to our original state. So, yes, how to improve the human condition, how to allay illness of spirit and body. Medicinal herbs was a reasonable approach. And because herbs are so multi-purpose and because there are so many good ones that are easy to grow, comfrey and calendula and so forth, then St. John's wort, these things are so easy that just growing 1 or 2 plants, making some remedies can allay most of the human ills, as long as you have the experience of herbalism, which is becoming more and more common. I haven't been to a doctor in many years, and it's all because of the herbs are there. Last night, I kicked a ladder in the house, and, when you're a man, you don't really acknowledge the pain. You can just move right through it. It's not a problem. But I walked to the bathroom and then I walked back out to the kitchen again and I realized that I was leaving a trail of blood the whole way. So I had to acknowledge it to the extent that the blood needed to be cleaned up. I took a Band-Aid from the shelf and put it on my toe, and it was immediately so soaked in blood that I had to discard it. It was completely useless. And then I found this pad. It said super absorbent pad. And I was like, oh, God, that's just what I need. And I wrapped that around my foot and I used some masking tape and I taped it to my foot. And then I got a towel and I retraced my steps and I wiped out all the blood. Then when I went to bed, I took the super absorbent pad off and I reached behind me to the bedstead and grabbed a comfrey salve and I put it on my throbbing toe and breathed carefully for a little while, and the throbbing just went away, and then I was able to go to sleep. So once again, herbs to the rescue. It's just these simple, simple things. And it's not only remedials for simple issues, but also for much deeper concerns like, oh, a neighbor was alcoholic and was demonstrating some of these cardiac issues that come around with the stimulation of the alcohol. You got this tachycardia, which is a runaway heartbeat. I was like, okay, well, you've stopped the alcohol and you still got the tachycardia. Now it's time for some hawthorn. And so these are much deeper issues. This can be life threatening. And the neighbor was taking some hawthorn, just like in season, just chewing the hawthorn berries, direct from tree to heart. And the tachycardia slowly disappeared. So we're not only talking about simple things like using dock to rub out a nettle sting, we're talking about deeper issues that have to do with life-threatening problems. Herbs can be used quite effectively as long as it's done appropriately. And that's why I wrote Making Plant Medicine, was to try to bridge that gap between knowing that there must be something out there that'll help and knowing what it is and how much of it to use and when not to use it.
Can I give you 2 pains in my body right now and share what I've tried and get your feedback?
Well, I'm not a licensed practitioner, so I try to stay away from giving people health advice, so I think I'll pass.
One thing I wanted to share is your love for Codonopsis wore off on me. I have a lot of Codonopsis in the garden right now it's 1 year into it, and I really enjoyed how it's a twining plant, and to your recommendations, planted, sunflowers and clipped near the Codonopsis to twine on, and it and gives us some shade, and it did very well with both.
Codenopsis, poor man's ginseng, Codenopsis palossula. There are some other, it's a bellflower, a really elite family, the Campanulaceae. It's one of those great herbs because it's a mix between a food and a medicine, and that's always reassuring to know that that effects are gentle enough that it can be used as a food. So, yeah, it's celery-like, can be eaten fresh. It has no acridity. It, definitely stokes the inner fire. What a great choice. Great, great medicinal herb. Sunflowers, yeah. Somebody on the internet was saying, "Oh, the sunflowers, they track the sun." Actually, they don't track the sun. They face to the east. And so watch out for the information that you get on the internet. It's not always correct. They also draw toxins out of the soil if you're growing in urban areas or in places that have been abused. They draw toxins out of the soil, and then you can compost the stalks and you can transmute poisons that way. If you go to my YouTube channel at Strictly Medicinal Seeds, you'll see numerous shorts on sunflowers, and one that's very popular is where it shows me taking a disposable hairnet and putting it on the sunflower because otherwise the birds will come in and eat all the seeds. And so I put hairnets on the best of the sunflower heads, and that saves them from being eaten by the birds. And then we use that for the seed for selling through the seed company. Also can be made into an oil just by boiling the seeds. The oil will float to the surface, and the Native American people did that and made a cooking oil that way. So many different things. Cleaning the soil, feeding the birds, food for humans, source of oil. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's just so cheerful and happy. Yeah, you spend time with a plant and you feel that way. I feel like that is the kind of form of, again, plant communication can be very vague. I think something I appreciate about your approach is more talking about how you feel after spending time around the plant, which is different from what can feel like a transactional nature of, "Oh, I'm going to take a pill with this extract in it. It's going to have a certain effect on me." Let's talk about more the sort of origins of our ills as a disconnect with earth and nature. Do you have any thoughts on where that stems from, and how do you try to heal it?
Well, the disconnect is not really that old. If you look at the way people were living in the 1800s, there was, of necessity, greater connection with nature and more basic skills that connect you with nature, chopping firewood instead of turning the thermostat. Lady in Russia said, in Russia, if you wish to make borscht, you must grow beets. So even these days, in some countries, there's of necessity more of a connection with nature, with earth, with gardening, with plants, just because you get hungry. And instead of putting a frozen something in the microwave, well, not only do you have the exercise of gardening and the pleasure of planting seeds and watching miracles unfold while a tiny beet seedling turns into a beetroot, but you have the medicinal food, betaine, all these coloring agents, the red coloring agents in different foods and medicines. We were talking about hawthorn, the red of the hawthorn berries, the anthocyanins in different fruits are extremely important for your overall longevity, the cleanliness of your vascular system. So it's just a win-win. You're out there, you're getting exercise, you're actually breathing clean air. The air is cleaned by the very plants that you're growing. So there's that exchange, the elemental exchange is occurring before anything is even consumed. You can work with your thoughts. Pulling weeds is like pulling the negative thoughts out of your consciousness. Composting is like taking your negative thoughts and turning them into food. Trimming the lower dead branches off of a woody perennial is like getting rid of the negative parts of yourself that you've consciously decided to expunge. Smelling a flower is like the opening of your heart. Then, like you were mentioning before, the little, like, every plant has its little personality, not to overly anthropomorphize, but we pick up on these things, don't we? And it seems like, you mentioned the mandrake, the Mandragora officinalis. Well, it's so very difficult to grow. And so that's challenging. And you need to really want to have it in order to make it work. And it requires a deeper understanding than growing peas and beans. So then when you have it, there's this avarice comes up because, it took so much effort that you're valuing it just like a miner might value gold. And so then it catches a hold of your mind and somebody wants some of it. And you think that you must sell it very dearly for that reason. And so I recognize all of these little nuances elbowing themselves into my consciousness, and I purposely create barriers against that kind of thing happening. And so maybe, you know, somebody's really enthusiastic, maybe you just give it away then. That's the medicine, is you create the opposite kind of feel, grabbing and tightly holding versus opening and just letting go. And so then it's clear that any kind of tendency towards avarice must be met with the openness of giving. And then we come back to neutral ground.
You talk about all these benefits of growing plants and being in this relationship with them. And I agree. And I find that true for myself. I find that the direction the world as a whole seems to be going in seems to be the opposite direction at times. And there's at least one story in our culture of, you're on Mars with the equivalent of the Star Trek replicator where you can 3D print any food you want to feed yourself, and you're never gonna get that, or maybe in the ideal utopian universe, you are gonna get that, all these specific chemicals and all this deep complexity. You're gonna get something watered down and simpler, and nutritionally, that's what we're being fed. Do you have any notion of what makes us go in this direction, or what do you see? Do you see things going in the opposite direction?
I see addiction, the tendency of the human organism to move towards easy pain relief, entertainment, which takes the place of thought, laziness, which takes the place of work. It's just like the casserole of human experience. You want to mix it up. You want to put the spices in there. You want to not eat the same thing every day. You want to be creative. We can go faster, fly higher, swim deeper, but all that is just kind of ephemeral to the basic quality of being a creative human being.
What do you have any sort of tips or suggestions? Someone says, "Great, Richo, I'd like to have more of that experience, but I don't even know how. I don't even know where to start." What would you say?
Well, that might be planting one calendula seed in a pot of potting soil and watering it and watching the magic happen and taking care of the plant and harvesting the eventual flower and, I don't know, rubbing it on a blemish or, or just smelling it or giving it away to a child who is crying. Just experience one full cycle of some kind of a natural process and move on from there. Once you experience the happiness of doing that, then you can take on the next step. I always say, do many little good things every day, and the positive results will accrue. It can also be just like helping a neighbor without expecting anything in return, because that just gives you just that one little step of karma that you can then step on, and then you can find the next one, and the next and the next. And again, it's just these little little steps, these little things that you do, little bits of goodness that accrue into something that you can then use for your own self-esteem and for the benefit of others.
Yeah. I think I can offer an example of that, and it's another tour of my garden. I have a single black maca plant in the middle of my garden right now, and it was the plant that a few years ago, I was sort of discovered maca powder as a addition to tea, and I liked the taste of it. It made me feel good. I thought maybe I should grow that. Researched growing maca, found how difficult it is. So, oh, no, you can't handle that. Didn't do it. And then come this winter, I was thinking about maca again, and I was like, Tristan, this is the problem. You're saying no to hard things. Just try growing it. Yeah, it's hard. Just see if you can do it." And I started maca seeds in February, March, had a small flat, and one by one, they got lost to one thing or another. It's a difficult plant to keep alive for me this year, but I learned about it. I got one down here to deep November. I'm enjoying that.
Yeah, little steps, and to the extent of your understanding and ability. For some people, it's going to be very, very simple to start with, to reconnect with your birthright of living, relating closer to nature. I mean, I call it great natures. Other people will call it God or spirituality. The concept that we're all one is just a concept until you can actually begin to experience it. So there's this difference between conceptualization and experience. So get out of your head and use your hands, get your hands on the earth, and then the feeling of oneness with the one soul, the connection to great nature becomes self-evident, and you realize, this is simply a part of my birthright. It's nothing complicated at all. I can do this, I can be this, and the I slowly melts away to a deeper connection with the one.
I wanna ask about human relationships. We've talked a lot about plant relationships. You've built a business alongside with your spouse and children. You've co-written, co-created books with your daughter, several of them. You've built a business with something like 40 staff. What do you carry over from the plant world to the human world that's working for you, if anything?
Patience. And gardening is about patience, really. You do something, you weed around a plant, you put some compost there, then you go away because it's going to happen in your absence. The plant's going to grow and develop in your absence.
Relative to the hippie dream, the business success, I mean, I live in the state of Ben& and Jerry's. It's maybe the one of the biggest hippie dream business successes there's ever been. What has you think sparks your business as a success?
Well, Tristan, we got lucky. We were in the right place at the right time. Actually, we were 10 years early, and we had to suffer for 10 years before we were in the right time. But we were the original medicinal herb seed company in the USA. We kept it family-oriented and rootsy. We put out our own catalog, one-color catalog, no glossy photos. We did our own line drawings. We spoke to the required points like characterization of the plants and germination of the seeds and pre-treatment and longevity and stuff like that from off of experience, because we had quite a bit of experience before we even got started in 1985. We spent 5 years in the Coast Mountains homesteading and made every conceivable error at that time. I worked for 11 years as the production manager at Herb Farm, manufacturers of liquid tinctures, liquid herbal extracts, and I learned business through them. We surrounded ourselves by people who cared. I've had probably 500 employees, so 470 of them have gone, and it's all impermanent. So you try to learn as you go and surround yourself with people who care about the same things that you care about. You care about your customers. You want them to really be successful, and yet you have to be a little bit hard-nosed because you don't want them to depend on you. You want them to take the materials you give them and create their own goodness. Self-sufficiency, you know, that's the value of these open pollinated plants that are seed saver friendly. By golly, you know, you got beets, you bought beets. If you leave a beet in the field, let it overwinter, the next year it's going to produce a lot of beet seed. Go ahead and use it. You don't have to buy nothing. And so that's part of the joy and the value of this work is giving people tools of self-sufficiency. Every year I grow a new sage. This year it was Salvia copet dogensis, the copet dog sage from the Caucasus, which are mountain range that divides Europe from Asia, and they're very ancient mountain range, which means that a lot of very old plants live there. And so you have the origins of many of the land races in places of great antiquity, like the Caucasus. So being able to like grow out a beautiful sage like that and collect the seeds and disseminate that to gardeners is a great joy. And it does mean that our work is still relevant.
Yes, it is. How did you stay married through all this?
Well, Tristan, opposites attract. And so I ended up with a very lovely hippie girl who was the opposite sex. And so that was a good start. And then she was very musical. She is a concert cellist. And I didn't have much music in my life. I played harmonica, but eventually I learned music from her. So there was that co-creation of music, which is really one of the highest human expressions is our music, that's why we're all so into it. It exists beyond the pain of hemorrhoids. And so then I'm type A, pretty careful about the way I do things. I take the dinner dishes and I wash them right away. I eat something, I brush and floss right away. It's time for bed, I go to bed. The sun is coming up, it'll never find me sleeping. But my wife, oh my goodness, the artistic mess that's left behind, no matter where she walks, is absolutely unbelievable. She's the exact opposite. Instead of an ordered reality, she has a reality where she takes pleasure in losing things so that she can feel anxious about not having them and then have the joy of finding them. Whereas I know exactly where everything is.
And how do you not drive each other crazy? How do you develop an appreciation for these differences versus the, oh my God, I can't believe you're looking for that key again. Why do you always lose your keys?
Because I don't say that. That would be fighting words. Then we would be in a fight. And that's not what either of us wants. We just want to serve each other in whatever way is necessary to maintain peace and move forward effectively because we're bound together in a marriage. And I have great appreciation for the fact that she brought me 3 beautiful babies. And she has great appreciation for the fact that I chop the firewood and stoke the stove. So we get along warmly in that way.
I love it. I want to ask you about herbal teas. This is a question I have from my life here. I've, 2 plants I've grown this year that I have spent a lot of time with are Epilobium augustifolia, fireweed,
Fireweed.
and Mexican tarragon. And I've sort of grown and dried both according to sort of basic directions. Did the bruising with the epilobium, let it sit for a couple days, dried it. Mexican tarragon, I hung near a dehumidifier, dried it beautifully. And I'm drinking a lot of tea right now with one or both.
Mm.
And here's the thing, in my household, myself and others appreciate coffee, other stronger flavoring warm drinks. And some of these herbal teas feel so, I think, more subtle, more just planty, tastes like a plant. And I don't know if I'm worried too much about appeal, but I want to grow herbal teas and then here, have this delicious drink. You're going to love it. And it's in some ways a different kind of experience from warm, sweet, creamy, rich, caffeinated beverages we're used to. I wonder if you have any advice just for appreciating these plants as they are or making delicious beverages.
It's a bit of a hard row to hoe, isn't it? I mean, on one hand, you've got this sort of weak beverage that is free and is good for you. On the other hand, you have this powerful stimulus that comes from very far away, lots of T miles on coffee,
Yeah.
and gives you a lift, a palpable a palpable drug effect. You just live by example, you know, you don't try to push it on anybody. You make it available. From time to time, you put it in front of them, as a gift, and maybe they drink it and maybe they don't, and if they don't, then you know, you probably don't put it in front of them too many times more. But again, Tristan, we addict ourselves to the right things. We're addictive personalities. We find our addictions in ways that serve us on a deeper level, and in so doing, we make the effects of coffee all the more enjoyable when we occasionally avail ourselves of it. And in the meantime, we keep trying. There's Tulsi, the holy basil, it makes a tea that's a little more aromatic, maybe has, especially when you're sick, has very palpable influence, will make you feel better. So, you have the entire pharmacopoeia in front of you and you try different things. You've tried a couple of unusual ones there. That's cool. They may have lasting attraction for you and you may continue to use those, or you might go to something else. I know in my own experience, I've run through a lot of different botanicals, and these days I really do like the Tulsi tea, or I just do direct consumption of a Tulsi leaf every day, which gives me kind of reorients my body with the positive chemistry, and it's a little bit less complicated than making tea. So that's where I would go with it, would be to just keep trying to put your finger on this slippery slug, and from at one time or another, it's not going to escape your touch, and family members will adapt and adopt. And yeah, as we tighten our belts more and more, homemade teas are going to seem more and more attractive. The coffee is getting really, really expensive. You make whatever you make, like maybe a kid makes $12 an hour and then spends $6 on a coffee. Hey, that's half an hour of labor, I mean, and plus you've got a plastic thing that you got to throw away, and there really is no way. And, how about the diesel that took the plane, that whatever. It's complicated. Keep it more simple and live by example. Then as you do these things, you'll get wiser and wiser. And as you get wiser and wiser, then people will be more and more attracted to you because the kinds of things that they're getting from you are really, really working. Uh-huh. So then you didn't have to push it on anybody. They are attracted to it themselves. That's the magic.
Mm. A bit of a left turn, but I want to ask you about diet, nutrition, being so connected to plants and herbal medicine, but also edibles. Diet is such a difficult topic. People have so many opinions. Do you have a take on what works for you, for your loved ones?
Well, ideally, farm derived and variable according to the seasons. Around here, first frost, or in this case, maybe a cold rain in October, means apples are ready. So then apple pressing, apple juice becomes a part of the diet at this time of year. Later on, maybe your the chickweed is coming on. Chickweed's coming on because this is sort of a winter grower around here. And so we're cutting chickweed and washing it carefully and putting that in our salads, or making it be our salad. And then we're getting the all that chlorophyll, you know, from a wild plant-derived source. And we're also getting the saponins, which are very cleansing to the body. Saponins, and tend to increase the solubility of other agents that we're eating, whether it be beets or basil. So we do a lot of vegetarian derived pastas, in our household and grow a lot of standard culinary basils to make into pesto. And we use our own Styrian pumpkin seeds for thickening the pesto. My wife never refuses it. I might give it to her 2 or 3 times a week in season, which is basically spring through fall. In terms of stuff that we're buying from the store, you know, food self-sufficiency is a chimera. You really need community to create food self-sufficiency unless, you don't want to eat any bread because it's just too complicated to grow your own wheat and get it ground and make your bread. And besides, it's not gluten-free. So it gets really complicated really fast if you try to do it all on your own. And you end up spending a lot of your time doing that. So you wanna trade and diversify your food with things that come from other local people. I sell herbs, I buy lettuce. Sometimes there's a monetary intermediate, sometimes it's a direct trade. So, yeah, just try to bring in some chlorophyll every day and some stodge, rice, potatoes, this kind of thing, pasta, just to keep your body engine rolling and not make it too big a deal, really.
You said on another podcast I listened to, plants eat light. And sometimes I think, why do we eat plants anyway? And I feel like you answered that for me. Plants eat light. And everything they do with light, we can't do. So we share.
Yeah. Plants, people, trees, animals, we all have a common destiny. You know, if you can't propagate your plants, then what hope is there for you? If you cut down your trees, then you're cutting down yourself. If you, on the other hand, provide place and sustenance for the things of the earth, the growing greens and the trees, then you're providing a place for yourself in the universe. So plant trees, people. Don't stop. Make it happen. The destiny of the trees is the same as the destiny of the people. Recognize that and get your hand away from the mouse pad and put it on the bark of a tree and give thanks.
Richo Cech, thank you for talking with me today and sharing with our listeners. Is there anything you want to leave people with? How do they find you? Is there a book you want to mention? Is there an ask?
Well, like you said before, which was good intuition on your part, everything that I know about herbs and herbal medicine, I've already put it in my books. I'm sort of turning the page. Making Plant Medicine was produced in the year 2000, very auspicious year, and is still very popular. So get a hold of Making Plant Medicine. You can get it through herbalreeds.com, just like sounds herbalreeds.com. That's getting it directly from me. I'll sign it and send it out to you. Growing Plant Medicine Volumes 1 and 2 will give you the natural farming techniques, methodology, and also an A to Z run through of important herbs that you can grow yourself, the identification of them, some of the active constituents, the preferred environment, the traditional uses, and the germination and cultivation of the plants. So Growing Plant Medicine Volumes 1 and 2, and then look forward to living the hippie dream.
I am looking forward to it, especially knowing I'm not in it. And your seeds are available at strictlymedicinals.com,
Right.
correct?
Yep. Strictly Medicinal Seeds is our seed company. We also do live plants and forest roots. We have a limited line of organically grown dried herbs from our own production. And my books are available there at Strictly Medicinal Seeds also. I'm putting more and more effort into the YouTube channel. I'm really enjoying the shorts. I know everybody else does, and it's, not exactly walking my talk to get people to look at it, but maybe it will be a jumping board. And so, check the YouTube channel. It's a lot of fun and gives a sort of a retinal image of what it is that we do.
Strictly Medicinal LLC is your YouTube channel. People always ask me on my farm, well, do you do no-till practices? And I think there's an idea out there that it's better to be no-till. And you, I believe, if I understand back correctly, you have trialed this side by side and found you get better yields from tilling. Of course, you're giving lots of love to the soil, so it's something I was able to sort of say, well, okay, I don't have to think of this as superior. I can just do the tilling that works rather than having this unachievable ideal of no-till. Did I get that right?
Yeah, good call, Tristan. You know, I mean, and it's kind of a coincidence that this morning I put cover crop information up on the YouTube channel and on Facebook. But, I'm a seed planter and I believe in preparing seed beds. So they say, keep the soil covered all the time. Well, I like to cover it with growing plants. And so I prepare a seed bed by tilling and then I spread my seed and then that blankets the ground. And then what that does is it kind of embodies the existing nutrients of the soil and brings it up and the sun feeds it. And then we mow that down and then we can plant right into that mulch, which is a no-till method. A lot of your medicinal herbs don't want to grow in mulch. You know, try growing a thyme or a rosemary or a hyssop plant in mulch, and you're going to have a real unhappy plant. They like to grow in rocks and dirt and sand and stuff like that. They like the reflection of light coming from the barren soil up into their leaf mass. And so no-till I like both.
Richo Cech, thank you. You're again, strictlymedicinalseeds.com is where to find you. And I appreciate your time with us today. Thanks for joining the Quilnick Experience.
My pleasure. Nice to meet you, Tristan. Good luck in all you do and just keep on keeping on.